Hello, everybody. How are you?
Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. It is Sunday, right? Happy Sunday.
It is Sunday.
Yeah, today we got a great show. I think we're going to uncover some things that's just not talked about, and I think it's going to be real appropriate. And you guys will see as we go on, but it's layers to this, and we're going to peel back a couple of hundred layers.
And I think that's really what it's about because a lot of people feel like they can talk about it, but I would want to come instead of the Facebook reels where people think they know what they're talking about. We'll come from the professional point of it all,
Hmm.
because those reels be having people scrambled, you know,
Mm.
like this person says this person says this. So today we have Miracle Norrit. And I'm just glad that you are here spending your Sunday with us all the way there podcast.
Miracle.
And guys, I have noticed I've been talking back and forth, having a phone interview with Miracle and everything. And I just realized today that Miracle have actually sat on our platform before. And I said, please forgive me. But she was a co-author when we did the Hush series with Tanisha. So Tanisha Johnson. So she's been here before, so she's not new to the platform, but she is new for what she's coming to talk about today.
Mhm.
So without further ado, Aaron.
Well, let me ask one good question, but before I do, today we are going to scratch in the musical stylings of Mr. Dexter Gordon.
Okay.
Dexter Gordon is a tenor jazz player, tenor saxophone player,
Okay.
and he hails from Los Angeles. Now, he has an interesting upbringing because his mother was the daughter of one of only 5 black men to get the African American Medal of Honor.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because he fought in the Spanish American War, and his dad was the very one of the very first African American doctors in the Los Angeles area.
Hmm.
Yeah, he started practicing medicine when he arrived in Los Angeles in 1918, and his son Dexter was born in 1923.
Very interesting.
Yeah, Dexter Gordon passed away in 1990 at the age of 67. So today
Wow.
we're going to scratch Mr. Dexter Gordon. And so while we scratch Mr. Dexter Gordon, I have a question for uh, Miss Miracle and Miss Keela B. That question is, where are we going today?
We're going all the way there. Okay. Let's go all the way there, guys.
Where are we going today? All the way there. Let's go.
Hello, everybody. Because so Instagram has a delay. And so the video, our music is still playing on Instagram, and I'm on Instagram, and I'm like, why are they so quiet? So
Hmm.
I didn't realize I hadn't popped back in the StreamYard. So this is what happened when you're trying to multitask. But anyway, today, guys, we have Miracle Norrit with us today, and I'm excited about this podcast. We got to talk off the screen, and this is such a deep dive right here. And the reason why I'm grateful to have somebody who actually specialized in this is because it's so much information out there on the internet that sometimes I feel like it could just take you down a rabbit hole, and you just back to me at square one, because it's like, now this guy just said don't do that. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, here you are. So, if, as people know, she is a trauma recovery coach and mental health first aid instructor with a doctorate in ministry and published author. And her mission is to inspire a greater level of hope and humanity as she empower individuals and organizations to navigate through the emotional and mental health challenges in the life of their pathway to rejoice. That's pretty deep. And what better way to come on a podcast where All the Way There is a podcast that help you transform your life. Yes. So here you are. Welcome, Miss Miracle.
Thank you, Keila and Aaron, for having me. I'm so glad to be back here again. I think it's amazing that you guys have this platform, and you allow this platform not only for your guests but for your listeners as well, so they could take part of this and take something away from what you guys allow to come on your platform to help them in their transformative journey. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Our honor. It's our honor.
We have a icebreaker question, and I didn't forget today.
I was about to say, wow, because I was literally about to remind you.
I know. I felt it coming. But anyway, we have we're talking about trauma today, but at the same time, I wanted to have a question that kind of shifts the topic a little bit to the solution. So the icebreaker is, and Miss Miracle, we always let our guests go first.
Okay.
What thing, person, what noun, I should say, person, place, or thing, absolutely brings you out of a funk? No matter how funky the funk is, what thing, what occurrence, place absolutely brings you out?
I would say that one thing would be my grandchildren. Like, my grandchildren, I literally could just go pick them up and we can have a whole full of activities, and I could be so tired and right. But just being around them and just playing with them, it fills my heart with so much joy that it literally dispels and eradicates anything I was going through. Like my grandchildren, I mean, drop them off at the end, be ready to drop them off. Right. But do what they do. They do what they do. They're my heart medicine.
Yeah.
I love it.
I was about to say they must not live with you. No, I'm just kidding.
They my medicine though. But for me, it's family. Overall, it's family. Just get me around my kids and my grandkids, and I'm good. It's my medicine.
Okay.
As they would say on Family Feud, great answer. Great answer. For me, in this season of my life, and not to sound super churchy, but it has really been like praise and prayer, because I turn to some great things. Like, I love being around my family, which I absolutely enjoy, my daughter being here and all of that great stuff. But lately it's been a deeper thing where I just have to get in there to lift my spirits back up, and I have to tap into a different place lately. And so that's kind of what it's been for me. What has it been for you?
For me, it's having a full refrigerator.
Okay.
It just brings me joy to know when I open my refrigerator, there's no echo, and I can just reach in there and just grab what I want. Love having a full refrigerator. And another thing is, and it has become my little thing recently, is like just kind of noticing how much I like being outside and planting and de-weeding, because I don't think about nothing, but it's just a peaceful kind of thing for me to just kind of plant flowers and weed and just figure out what plants I can clip off and plant and they come back. So that kind of thing. So gardening, and then coming in the house and seeing a full refrigerator.
Gardening is always therapeutic for me. I love it. My mom says my family, and I just love being around them. Okay, mother, I hear you. You like to have me around. So let's jump into it. Oh, Crystal says,
Yeah, Crystal, music gives me comfort, and that's the same for me. Same for me. I loved it. And Miss Graham says, with these prices, I can see loving a full refrigerator. Yes, ma'am.
man, you're not even lying.
Yeah.
Because I went to go buy some stuff for tacos, and y'all remember tacos used to be the cheapest meal you could make.
Mm-hmm.
That lady said $50, and I'm like, where? Because we gonna only eat right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really good. That's good, Mom. So
Let's dive
Miracle.
into this. Yeah.
Yeah. Miracle, tell us about you. Tell us about what you talk about every day. Tell us about your passion and how you here helping the community. And then we're going to dive into this trauma topic.
Yes. And tell us if you have a full refrigerator. And if you do, what's your address? Okay, go.
It's the full refrigerator for me, okay? Because I think that would make me happy too, especially if I'm stressed. Okay, just give me something that makes my heart smile. Okay. What about me? I think that I was always called into trauma. I was always called to help people within from way long time ago. I remember the first time I witnessed my mom or was aware that my mom had a mental health breakdown. And I remember just taking care of her. I remember just talking to her and just giving her some tea. And I just wanted to help her heal. I think I was about 8 years old. And I just thought that I could take care of her. Like I can help her. And I've always been the go-to person, right? I've always been the go-to person whenever somebody was going through. And I always wanted like that. It's never stressful for me to help people deal with their emotional challenges. There have been moments where tears was coming down my face and somebody would call with a problem and those tears would go right back up. Right. But I think more and more as I got older, even in ministry, before I even understood trauma, I was drawn to deliverance ministry. I was drawn to healing ministry. I think the first training I did was deliverance and inner healing in ministry. Right. So from street ministry, so it's really not by chance, but I would have to say that the motivating force was my mom, who dealt with mental health challenges all of my life, right? And she had experienced trauma, so much trauma by the time that she was 13 years old, that she had her first breakdown from sexual abuse, child abuse, abandonment, different things, losing her first child, and not knowing what to do, right? So back then, there was such a heavy stigma that's all they did was medicate the misery. Right. And if you were in church, it was demonized. And as I got older and became her guardian, I wanted to understand, why am I taking you to the doctor and you're just repeating everything? And it's just like we're just going through like a pattern, but there is no breakthroughs. What's happening? And she was a faithful woman of God. I learned the power of the word of God through her, because she would speak the word of God every day, all day long. And I'm thinking, what the heck is the problem? Like, what's going on? So I took a deep dive into understanding trauma. Into understanding how trauma affects us. And then my life, when I look back on my life, and as I started studying, because I wanted to be a better advocate for my mom, right? I wanted to understand her more. I wanted to be able to help her. But as I started studying to help her, I started seeing myself. Like, wait, they're talking about me about this betrayal trauma. They're talking about me with childhood. That's me, childhood emotional neglect. That's me with imposter syndrome. Wait a minute. I started seeing myself in the pages, because I started seeing how the trauma that I experienced, how it shaped my belief system and how it shaped some of my behaviors. And even how my mom, what she went through and what I went through was parallel. And so it was so important for me to not only allow the Holy Spirit to help me heal, because I went through my recovery and trauma as I was going through training, as I was going through learning about it. And it was so important for me not to go back to my mom and to help her unlock. And I like to say that she experienced many, many miracles, right?
Mhm.
Many, many miracles of breakthroughs when she allowed herself to be vulnerable enough to open up, right? And we got to experience some things before she passed away in 2022 that she never experienced in her life, right? And then it was also important for me to go back to my kids, right? Because we're not just survivors of trauma, but if we be honest, we inflicted some, and I know I did unknowingly,
Child.
right? Unknowingly,
But people have to admit that.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, right? I had to go back for my kids, and so that first book that I wrote, Healing the Child Within, I dealt with that. I dealt with healing the child within of my own mommy issues, and then confronting and allowing my children, right, taking accountability and ownership for the mommy issues that I caused with them.
Okay, so what exactly is trauma? Because we hear this word and we know that it's obviously something traumatic, but mentally, what is that? Because trauma can cause people to be schizophrenia. It can cause people to have, like you said, mental breakdowns. It can cause people to just come out of the different doors with this. So what exactly is trauma?
I think what we can understand is that trauma refers to any type of experience that was disturbing or overwhelmingly emotional, that made you feel unsafe, that made you feel like you didn't have control, and it's different for everybody. So what may be trauma for me may not be trauma for you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Okay.
When we think about traumatic experiences, we're always thinking about like the major things that happens. Right? Like, like child abuse and sexual abuse and domestic violence and things like that. But it's also childhood emotional neglect. It's also your parent just working 80 hours a week. It's also that feeling of rejection. It's also that controlling. It's also bullying, right? So it's what you perceive. And that could be something as small as a spider or as big as COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah.
So it's different for all of us.
Yeah. You said something earlier off the grid that I thought would make a great premise for the show. You said that trauma can be overcome, and I am trying to paraphrase it close as possible. But you said trauma can be overcome if you want it to. If you want
Yeah.
to. Can you repeat that? Because it's a good premise to start from.
So it is my conviction that we all can heal from our traumatic experiences, right? We all can recover, but we have to want to. We have to be willing to allow ourselves to feel what we feel without dismissing it. We have to be willing to embrace the pain, right? We have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to admit that we're not okay, right? We have to be willing to take off the mask, take off the strong woman, take off the strong man, and say, it's me. I'm hurting. This affected me, right? And I think that when we are open enough to be vulnerable, to say that something is not right and get curious about our emotions and about our feelings, then we can heal.
Yes, I like that.
I like that too. Shout out to the Finally Heard podcast. They did something. I want to ask you if you think that this is okay to do, because I'm now trying to springboard. How do we heal? Because now the thing is, how do you recover from trauma? And I don't know if it's a step by step or a case by case, but one of the things that they did was they wrote a letter to their younger selves. And, it was something about not a letter saying, avoid this person, avoid that person. But it was more like, when this happens to you, I would have loved to come back and tell you that it's going to be okay. This is not the end of the world. It was more like a hug to your younger self instead of coming back with some anger and venom and saying, avoid this person, avoid that person. Would you recommend that in your research?
So absolutely. I recommend that. I also recommend writing a letter to the person that hurt you. Because sometimes we don't want to deal with that, right? We don't want to deal with the person that hurt us. We don't want to admit that what they did that hurt us.
Yeah.
And so with my clients and in workshops that I've done, what I did was had the person to go back to a memory, whether it's from your childhood, from your teenagehood, of something that really affected you, and write a letter to that person. Explain to that person what they did that hurt you, right? Who write a letter and make sure in this letter you're talking to everybody that was involved, because it's not just the person who affected you, right? But it's also the person that you might have blamed for it happening, right? Or that you might have felt like they should have did something but didn't, right? And so being able to release that, because it's non-linear, right? And so it doesn't, and it's so many layers to it. One incident, you may have so many different layers, maybe 6 or 7 different layers that you can heal from. So writing a letter, and in that book, The Child Within, in that book, Coach My Life, I wrote a letter. I shared a letter that I wrote to my mom, but I never gave it to her. Yes, but I never gave it to her until before we were publishing the book. And I wrote a letter because and this is a trigger warning that, you know, I lead with transparency, and so I will share. You know, you may hear stories about sexual abuse or suicide ideations and things like that. So at 13 years old, after being molested and raped and impregnated, after I had my first child, I tried to commit suicide. I remember feeling like, where's my mom? She was very much present, but she never asked me, was I okay? She never encouraged me. And she didn't have the wherewithal to do it, right? Because she was going through her own mental health challenges, and she was going through her own abuse. But I remember feeling so alone and so abandoned. Like, I never heard her say, we're going to get through this. Right. To her. And I said, what I would like for you to have said that everything's going to be okay. I would like for you to say that I'm so happy you're still with me. And in me expressing that in the letter, it healed that teenage version of me that just wanted her mom to be there. But it also healed my mom. When she read that letter, she cried. She said, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I was so happy that you were still here, but I didn't know how to communicate it because she was emotionally disconnected. Because of her own experiences. Even came, right? So writing that letter, whether you share it with the other person or not, healing is for you. And even in that letter, add forgiveness, because you got to be willing to let it go. You got to be willing to release, right? That person who hurt you, that person who disappointed you, that person who abandoned you. You got to be able to release them from the debt, because holding in unforgiveness is like holding yourself hostage to the pain and waiting on them to pay the ransom for the ransom that Jesus already paid for all of us.
Exactly.
So you got to be willing to let it go.
Wow, that's deep.
So my mom, girl, you said a mouthful.
Yeah. Mr. Graham says, Doctor, wouldn't you think everybody would want to be free? Or do they bury those hurts and don't want to realize anything is wrong?
You would think that everyone wants to be free, but I think is exactly what was said, that sometimes they don't even remember what happened. They don't even know that they're walking wounded. They don't know that they are a prisoner of their pain, right? I didn't know it for years. I didn't know when I was raising my children, I was the critical mom. I didn't know I was critical because I didn't want my daughter to walk down some of the experiences that I did. I did not know, right, that I was being a best friend with one of my children because I avoided conflict, right? Because of my trauma. So there's a part of some of us that we just don't know. But then when we do come into the realization of it, sometimes we just don't want to do the work. Because healing is not a ray of sunshine. Oh, it's an emotional roller coaster.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Do you think some people, I think they may know they need to healing and they may even admit it, but I think sometimes they want to hold it hostage because of, I don't want to let these people off the hook. So they just hold it hostage and it's miserable for everybody that's around them. So how do you talk to that person? That's like, I know you're recognizing it, but why do you want to hold it hostage for this attention or this, maybe they feel like they're just, if I let this go, I feel like they're getting away with it.
So that could be one thing, right? And it could also be the victim mentality, which is birthed through me holding on to it is me playing the victim. It's me staying in a victim mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the learned behavior of a victim mindset is that I get validated and I get support, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I can just continue to express what happened to me, and when I could, I'm still going through this. This is still bothering me. This is a coping mechanism, right? Mm-hmm. It's a tool that they've learned. Like, okay, being the victim got me validation. Being the victim got me love and got me support. And so now it's a learned behavior that I continue to do until I'm willing to lay down the victim mentality and say, I want to be victorious in this. I want to overcome this. I don't want to hold on to the pains of this, because holding on to it is like drinking poison and waiting on the other person to die. They're no longer thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. They gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're gone.
So Miss Miracle, what is I know it's not a step-by-step thing, or is it? I mean, so if someone says they have this trauma, what's the first step that they need to do? And what's the second step that they need to do? So I don't know if it's that cookie cutter at all, but go ahead.
It's definitely not cookie cutter. It's definitely going to be different, but I think everybody has to acknowledge, right? Everyone has to assess and be explorative of their emotions, of their triggers. Mm-hmm. And once you understand it, when you understand that, okay, when somebody say this, it triggers me and it makes me feel like this. And then you take this, and when was the first time that this happens? Because most time when we're triggered, you're going to get a reaction based on what happened 20 years ago, not necessarily what happened right then. Right? Mm-hmm. It's like 10 times worse, because really what you're triggering is what happened that made me feel abandoned 20 years ago. And now what you're doing now is triggering that abandonment issue. So now if I can go back, right? And a lot of times we don't want to lean into the truth, because sometimes the truth is real, right? Sometimes that fear is real, the fear of what happened. Maybe they did abandon you. Maybe they did just leave you. And it's being okay to accept that. It's accepting what the truth was, that even though they rejected me, even though they left me, it had nothing to do with me, right? I can be okay. And even if it did have something to do with you, accepting that truth, it was then, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we have to be willing. The truth will set us free if we allow it to.
Mm-hmm. And I think you just said a mouthful, because sometimes it is you, but if you aren't willing to face what it is for the reason that it is you, then you just continue to recycle lies, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So you have to sometimes take ownership of why did these things, some of the things, I'm not saying everything happened was your fault, but why did some of these things happen? You know what I mean?
Because certainly there's a whole lot of traumatic experience that was not our fault, right?
Right.
That was, we didn't have nothing to do with it. We didn't invite it. It just happened to us.
It just happened.
So we're not responsible for what has happened to us, but we are responsible for how we move forward.
Absolutely.
It is, we have to be willing to take ownership. I cannot say, well, because my mom was never there for me, because my mom wasn't able to teach me nothing, because my mom went through all this, that might have been a reason I was stuck for so long. But eventually, right, I have to be able to say, how do I want my life to go forward? Because right now, it ain't going to be my mama's fault. It's going to be my fault that I didn't do the work, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't do the work that was necessary. The Bible tells us to lay aside the weight and the sin, right? Mm-hmm. There is some emotional weight that have us stuck. right? I like Erica Badu. I call her a prophet, right? When she sing
Mhm.
that song, Bag Lady, right? You gonna miss your bus carrying all that stuff.
Exactly. That's a
We
good
gotta be
song.
willing to lay aside. What is the weight that I'm carrying that has me stuck? What is the weight that I'm carrying that has me repeating patterns that is unfruitful? What is the weight that I'm carrying that has me having a negative mindset or have me having a fixed mindset that's not bearing the fruit in my life that I want it to bear?
Mm.
Gotta be willing to lay it aside.
Mhm.
Girl, you coming out the bag today. We'll probably take an offering.
We got
Crystal says, Aaron.
Crystal says, it is real hard to approach someone who will never admit or listen to the hurts. So you just forgive, keep your distance, and go on with your life. So D. Randall says,
Thank you, Crystal.
chapter 1, trauma usually can destroy a strong mentality. Also, I've come to experience that the longer you hold on to trauma, the harder it is to break. I also believe most people tend to not want to talk to anyone because of trust issues. They are afraid it will be used against them.
Baby,
Mhm.
you
That right
just said
there.
a whole mouthful because
That right
people
there.
love to bring that stuff up, and especially when you're trying to be open and transparent. That was a good point.
Mhm.
That was a really good point. And that is the truth. And this is why I teach trauma-informed leadership trainings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to be able and willing to create a safe space for people, not just
Mhm.
physically, but emotionally, right? We have to be willing to foster a sense of trust and safety, right? If we want people to heal, that means we have to do this in our households. That means we have to do this in our churches. That means we
Right.
have to do this wherever we go. Be that safe space for somebody. And I believe that every one of us have someone that we can go to.
Mhm.
We have someone that we can go to. And I think one of the powerful things that Mr. Randall said is it's the fear
Mhm.
of mistrust. It's their trust
Mhm.
issues. So it's the fear that if I go to you with it, you may bring it up back up. What I've learned and what has worked for me is, baby, I lean into my fear. Yep, you may go and say something, right?
Mhm.
But I've learned that I got to lean into my fear, because even in that fear, if I let fear hold me hostage, if I let fear block me, I'm never going to heal. Healing is for me. And when I talk about a thing, I get healing.
Mhm.
And because I lead with transparency, and this ain't for everybody, but this is my superpower. I lead with my transparency. I lead with what I've been through. You can't do nothing to me with what I've been through, because I've
Mhm.
already overcame it.
Okay.
So for me, my mindset is this: if I'm carrying something that's weighing me down and I need to talk to somebody, I need to get it out, I'm going to have to override that fear, right? I'm going to have to find somebody, even if it's a stranger, that I'm going to be able to open up to and talk to about it and release. Because sometimes just talking about it, just getting it off your chest, it
Right.
releases and frees you.
I think also playing a part of just learning people sometimes, because sometimes you can feel like you can trust a person, and then once they start to use it against you, it's like, okay, I know that that's a cap on that, and so then you have to move on. So I do get it. I completely understand what Damon was saying. That was a very good point. Were you getting ready to ask her a question, Aaron?
Yeah. So, how important is it to go back to the point of trauma? And I know, you were saying off the grid about going back to the point of hurt in order to come out, because even like Jesus did it. Remember when Peter denied him 3 times, and then he kind of took Peter back to that and asked him, "Do you love me?" 3 times. Kind of took Peter back to the point of trauma in order to come out of the trauma. Do you agree with that, or is that something that? Because what I'm trying to do is get to a step by step. How do we get out of this mug, no matter
It's
what?
going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, right. You said that.
Right. So some people do need to go back to the trauma. But if you remember, was it Joseph in the Bible? And he experienced all of that trauma from his brothers, right?
Right.
He never went back to what happened. He never talked to them. He never told them, look, this is what y'all did. he forgave them
Mhm.
without even communicating with them.
Mm.
Right. So for some people, some people don't need to go back to this trauma.
Yeah, right.
I do though. I'm one that I need to go to the root because I need to understand my mindset. I need to understand what happened and how it's affected me. But like I said before, some people don't need to. Some people just want the solution. How can I move forward? Or some people just need motivation, right? Of moving forward. Going back to your trauma, I think is an important factor because it helps you understand your behaviors and stuff now. That's
Mhm.
really important for me. Experiencing childhood emotional neglect, it helped me understand why I suffered with low self-esteem. It helped me
Mhm.
to understand why I suffer even with the imposter syndrome. Because
Mhm.
as a child, we need the emotional validation of our parents, especially during those critical development
Yeah.
stages. So if you're not getting that development, if you're not getting that emotional nourishment, then you grow up wondering, are you good enough? For
Mhm.
like, so for me, my mom and my dad was present, but I never got that. And I was an all A student and everybody else validated me, but I never got the validation from my mom and my dad.
Mhm.
No matter how good I did in school, no matter how good my aunties and everybody around me, praised me, I suffered with, am I good enough? And so I
Mhm.
developed a perfectionist syndrome, right? Where
Mm.
good enough. Let me rewrite this. This is not good enough. It ain't deep enough. It ain't, so much that is, and even though I went through some trauma recovery and I began to heal, I had to teach trauma-informed leadership training at a trauma recovery school. I did
Mhm.
so much research on that school that I intimidated myself. I stayed up
Mm.
5 o'clock in the morning redoing what has already been effective.
Right.
Right? Because I told me, oh, you're not good enough. That imposter syndrome, it stood a way tall. Right? So
Right.
because
Right.
I understood where this came from, I allowed myself to lean into the fear. What do imposter syndrome tell you? It tells you, oh, you feel like you're not good enough. You feel like
Right.
what you're doing, maybe you ain't prepared enough, or you ain't did that. So I leaned into the feeling. I walked into that place shaking. Okay.
Mhm.
First of all, I walked in there shaking. I messed up my screen. Okay. I had to teach without a display, right? The first 10 minutes of it, I felt like electricity going through my body because
You have overworked yourself so much.
I was in such a hyper-vigilant state. They had an emotional support dog, and I promise you, I leaned into that moment when that dog ran up to me. I leaned into that moment and I said, it's okay. You
Mhm.
may not be good enough for some of these people, but for some of
Mhm.
these people, you're going to be more than enough. And it's
Right.
okay. You understand? And so the moment I did that and leaned to the fear that maybe I'm not good enough, because maybe I'm not good enough for some of these. Some of these people can probably spin blocks around what I know.
Right.
But then I am here. The door has been opened because I'm supposed to be.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
moment I did that, I just flowed. My reviews was one of the professors said, "You got. I saw you when you got your second win. That confidence
Mhm.
that you got, lead with that."
Mhm.
And that was real. And guess what? One of the reviews said, "Yeah, I already had this information."
But that's okay. You got it
That
again.
was okay. But because I needed to lean into I needed to understand how why I was dealing with this, it helped me to deal with it effectively.
That's funny you said, because I used to deal with the imposter syndrome as well. So I can completely relate. But mine was from the other end of like being exposed. Like people gonna
Mhm.
say you don't have the credentials for this, or how you up here on this platform and you haven't even who qualified you to be here. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely had to bust through that. God literally, he spoke to me through a dream and said to me, I qualified you. And that is kind of how I started to get over some of that stuff. So I can completely relate. Um, I know your book, Win from Within, is talking about emotional awareness. There are some people who lack emotional awareness. How do these people even know that they lack it? Is it something that they could discover on their own, or can be told, or how do they know? How do they know these things?
So I think emotional intelligence. So emotional awareness is just it helps you to become aware of your emotions because we don't
Mhm.
know, right?
Mhm.
We don't know until we know, right? I
Mhm.
often hear people say, well, we don't know what we don't know. So,
Mhm.
but I think that the more you grow and mature in emotional intelligence, the more you're able to deal with the emotions of yourself and others in
Mhm.
a healthy way, right? How do you know you lack emotional intelligence? You go from 0 to 10 real quick. How do you know you lack emotional intelligence? You can't your emotions get disrupted because of somebody else's emotions,
Mhm.
right? We can get into it and you could be all over the place. I don't have to react that way.
Right.
Just because my emotional intelligence would allow me to hold space for you going from 0 to 10 without me going from 0 to 10.
Right.
Right. But what happens because we're not aware of our emotions and our triggers, people get triggered in these conversations, in these heated moments. So you say something that triggers me. Now I'm reacting and I'm saying something that triggers
That trigger.
you. We're both on 10 and we don't even know what the heck we're talking about.
That's real.
Right. So it's for me, I've learned to just hold space. Right. I've learned that you have a right to be angry.
Mhm.
It's okay to be angry. Who gets their foot stepped on and don't scream?
Right. Exactly.
Angry, and I don't have to internalize your anger as you disrespected me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Angry. Let me hold space for you to be angry in this moment. Of
Mhm.
course, I'm not saying let anybody emotionally abuse you, but what I'm saying is we have to learn to just hold space for other people's emotions without taking it personal.
And I think that's another key factor too, because I think sometimes people who can be emotional abusers may not even realize that they are. You know what I mean? So that's a different. But I want to read his question here. How does someone deal with trauma from someone they were attached to, like a family member? You may be able to answer that. I feel like I need a little more, but I'm not the doctor.
No, you what you mean?
Because I mean, how does someone deal with trauma from someone they were attached to? Like, did the person that they were attached to cause the trauma? So I guess I'm just was saying that I would need a little more, but you may understand it.
So I think that is more of like my relationship with my mom, right? Or my relationship
Hmm.
with my kids, or my
Okay.
relationship with my husband, right? Or anybody else who have caused the trauma,
Okay.
right? So talk about someone who's caused the trauma. For an example, my father molested me.
Hmm.
Now, before
Sorry
I
to
even
hear that.
understood trauma or knew about it, I completely disconnected from him, right? I was emotional disconnected. I would only be around him if I needed something. That was it, right?
Mm.
He got sick and he had cancer. At this time, I was
That's
dealing
what I
with
thought.
forgiveness, right?
Okay.
And I had to forgive him. And I thought, hey, I said I forgave him, so I forgave him. But I didn't because the fruit of forgiveness shows up in your behavior, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not to say that you can't reconcile every relationship of whoever has caused you trauma in your life, but if it's at all possible, right? If it's healthy for you to do so, then of course we want to reconcile relationships. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
deal with forgiveness. And I had to deal with forgiving my father. And up until this point, I never addressed my father for what has happened to me, right? For
Mm.
what he did. And there was one time I just had to have a conversation with him. I had to be willing to let him know how what he's done has affected me. So I had this open conversation with him, and I'm telling him, like, not only did you do this to me, but I feel like you put a stamp on my forehead for me to get abused by all these other men as well. And I poured my heart out crying, not expecting anything from him. I didn't expect for him to take ownership, accountability, or anything. I needed for me to just get it off my chest. And so
Mm-hmm.
in doing that, his response was he took everything how I treated him because he felt he deserved it because of what he did and what he knew was wrong.
Mm.
I think that also for me, and I only could give the Spirit of the living God, like Holy Spirit, credit for this. God has kept my heart in such a way that I also understand that who abuse you have been abused too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
People say hurt people as a cliche, but it's real.
It's real.
Right? It's real. And so holding space and understanding and being willing to forgive, to me, that's how you're able to move forward with the family member. But there are some family members that you're not going to be able to move forward with. There's some family members that you've done all you can. You're going to have to dust off your feet and walk away with peace. But you know that, right? The thing about it is I can forgive you and still move forward, and I can love you from a distance. If loving you is hurting me, I gotta guard my heart. Right? The Bible tells me to guard my heart, right? Because the issues of life flow out of it. So I gotta guard my heart. I gotta let the peace of God guard my heart, which means I'm not gonna keep putting myself in positions where I'm being abused and being hurt.
Absolutely.
So when I know that after I've come to you and after I addressed our issues and you're not doing anything to move forward, you're not doing anything to heal, and whatever's causing you to react to me that way is interrupting my peace, then it's time for me to put distance between us. That's the boundaries that need to be set, because people would benefit off of your brokenness and get mad at you if you set boundaries.
Yep. That's so true.
Wow. So, Miss Miracle, what are some of the behavioral things that show a person that they're coming through their trauma? They're over the hump. It doesn't bother them anymore. What telltale signs do you see of a person that they can identify? I think I'm coming through this because this is not happening. This is not happening.
You're no longer reacting to your triggers. I think the number one sign is that you're no longer reacting to your triggers. It's not that you no longer get triggered. You're just it no longer has the power to make you react. And so you've learned and you become aware of your triggers. You become aware of what has happened, and now you can respond to what you need. And you respond by creating that, if you need to remove yourself from a situation, if you need to just hold space for somebody to say what they say without it affecting you and causing you to react in a certain way, you're responding instead of reacting. I think that's the number one sign, because some of the behavior symptoms that you are still harboring hurt in your heart is avoidance, it's withdrawal, it's substance abuse, it's self-destructing behaviors, it's going from 0 to 10. It's avoiding conflict. And a lot of people think that avoiding conflict, we're peacemakers, right? We should avoid conflict. Avoiding conflict doesn't mean not dealing with the issue that has disrupted your peace. It actually means you need to we got to deal with it. We have to deal with what disrupts our peace. And it's called being able to have those challenging conversations, right? Being able to have those challenging conversations so that you could deal with the problem that's disrupting your peace.
That's good.
I think too, I think it plays a lot of parts. I like some of the things you said, just the going from the 0 to 10, avoiding conflict, because there's another side of that. People who always want conflict. So there's two sides to that. The people who avoid the conflict, and then you can't get anything solved because they don't want to talk about it. And then people who always want to have conflict. So how do people approach those people? Because, like everything is just always a fight.
I think that for me, it is really just knowing that person may need to heal, and you may need to separate yourself. You may need to set boundaries. So there's always somebody that, 1 minute everything is okay, then the next minute y'all got an issue about something, right? And to me, it's protecting your peace, because you can't control somebody else's behaviors. Right? No matter how much you may want to, you can't, no matter how much you may want that other person to heal, no matter how much you may want that other person to forgive and move forward, you can't control their behaviors, but you can control yourself. And I think that's what's needed. Being able to realize that, giving people autonomy and choice. You got the choice to be angry. You got the choice to always want to be frustrated and always want to start problems, but I'll also have the choice to remove myself from the situations.
Absolutely. So, okay, we have somebody send something. So I like the writing letter part. When we were kids, my mom told us if we had something to tell her and was afraid to say it, just write her a letter and put it under her pillow. I'm not sure where she got that from, but listening to you, it was a good way for her to assist.
Yes.
But I go ahead.
So, Miss Miracle, I was going to go get into the books.
Okay, well, before I say that, I was going to say that's a good idea to do, but then having the parent who will come back and actually talk to you, because there are some parents that still get mad and be like, you wrote me this letter and blah blah blah. So I think how do they deal with that either? Because that's some issue. That could be some issues for some people.
Listen, that is the hard part. Okay, like even with me knowing about trauma and understanding trauma, when I went back for my children, and I have 7, that at least 6 of them had some real issues with me. It was the hardest part to sit there and take in everything they were saying.
Yes.
Without making an excuse, right? Without blame, but to take accountability. It's not easy. Literally, it seemed like everything was good. It seemed like we was a close-knit family, and then I went and picked the scab, and then everything just went haywire, one at a time. Some 2 at a time. And I'm like, Jesus, all I want to
wait, I've been doing all of this.
I didn't mean this. Let's go back. But I'm committed. And to be honest, there are still some, because healing is a journey.
Right.
And so you can heal one layer today, and then I just healed grief. I just grieved my father, who died maybe 15 years ago, I think. I just grieved him because my heart was so filled with so much of the pain that I didn't miss him at first. But the more I started healing, and I think it was 5 years ago when I actually finally, as I started my healing journey, that I began to heal. Like, dang, my dad didn't get to walk me down the aisle. Like, dang, he didn't get to spend time with you know what I'm saying? But before then, it was because there was so much pain that was repressed. It was so much pain that was repressed. And I think for parents, it's the hardest part to heal, because we do the best that we can with what we have, but our best intentions does not dismiss the experience.
It really doesn't. My daughter, she was also a letter writer, so I would have to read her letters, and sometimes I'd be like, I didn't say that. But then I'll have to think about, well, it's probably what she heard. Even though I didn't say that, it's what she heard. So that's very important. So we want to talk about the books. Is that what you said, Aaron?
Yeah.
Okay. So starting off with her first book, Coach My Life. Can you tell us about that one?
So Coach My Life I did a chapter in this one, and that chapter was titled Healing the Child Within. Okay. And in that book, I talked about the mommy issues, right? Because we'll talk about daddy issues all day long, but we never want to address issues that we have with our mom.
Yeah, let's talk about the mamas. Go ahead.
Yeah, because people, they always talk about all the girls who had daddy issues, but we don't talk about all the people who have mama issues.
Yes.
Because Lord knows.
And it's real.
Some of them sons. We're going to talk about this.
And mommy issues is sons or daughters. My daughters had mommy issues with me.
So
the Win From Within.
I'm like Vanna White right now. Okay.
So that is the first book that I actually authored, and it is to help you process your emotions and become more aware of your emotional trauma, your triggers, and how you're responding. And it's set up as a workbook, as if I was coaching you through it.
Okay. I like that. Okay. And then you have some things coming up really quick. Let's talk about this. Okay, let me do the ticker.
So that is our Lunch and Learn Mental Health First Aid Training Certification.
And when you say lunch, what entails? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
It's not
And
a
then-
full fridge, but it's a light lunch. And then I come in for a parenting workshop. We do that, and that's free every third Thursday of the month,
Mm.
Okay.
and it's virtual.
Okay. And then we have.
The Trauma Recovery Coaching Certification. This one starts on Tuesday, actually. It is for those who want to go into helping others heal from their trauma and recover from their trauma. It's a 12-week course. It's like 3 hours each week. We deep dive, and because I lead with transparency, we deal with your trauma too. Because a lot of times we don't understand how our trauma affects us when we're trying to help other people.
Now that last graphic had a tag on it that said, "Oh, I didn't know you were done." Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you want me to go back to the last one?
I
This
just
one?
had a question. What is the $12.97 for?
Oh, that's the cost. So that's the
Oh,
cost for the Trauma Recovery Coaching Certification. Is $12.97 for the 12-week course.
so 12
Oh,
meaning
nice.
$1.297.
1,200.
97 cents.
I noticed it didn't have no commas, so I just put it where I wanted it.
It didn't?
It didn't. It
Oh.
didn't.
Because I was willing to pay $1.297. Okay, go ahead.
And this is our pledge to make mental health a priority in your life and in the life of the youth that's around you. We have a My Mental Health Matters campaign, and we've been going year round. Our goal is to educate and empower. We end the stigma through education and empowerment.
Oh, wow. You have a lot on the ball
Yeah.
here, really helping people mentally.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big thing in our community. So my mom said, this is so good. I feel like I'm in a therapy session.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was hoping that's what it felt like for people today, because it's just so much going on. And with mental health not being a priority like it used to be back when we were growing up, remember they had the hospitals and, you know, everything. Now people are kind of like on their own a little bit. It's not as, you don't hear about the mental hospitals like you used to back in the day. I think it has to be like serious cases.
Shout out
Where-
to Governor John Engler. But go ahead.
Oh,
So
Somebody got to say it.
yeah.
But go ahead.
So here's my thought process on that.
Okay.
I think that when we're dealing with emotional and mental health, a hospital is not necessarily the place to start.
Mhm.
Got
I think
you.
that is when it becomes a crisis situation and out of control.
Mhm.
I would like to see hope inspired in humanity in such a way that we are creating that safe space, fostering healing and resilience for each other before it gets to a crisis.
Mhm.
I like that.
Mhm.
Because when a person has a mental health crisis, it's because they suppressed this for so long.
Right. And like I said, it's so much that can come out of this show. You really covered a lot. You said a lot. I think you helped a lot of people. What we need a challenge for today. So do you have a challenge for the people?
I do have a challenge. So my challenge for everybody is to think about what's triggering you. What's that one thing that triggers you? When they do this, I feel like this, and deal with that this. So for an example, when people dismiss me, I feel unworthy, right? When was the first time I felt dismissed?
So what if you
And I
can't
go
think
back and
back
deal
to the
with that.
first time you felt dismissed? I mean, because
So
sometimes
that's the challenge.
Okay.
Where are we going today?
Okay.
That's the
And
challenge of
going
the
back
week.
and dealing with that.
So,
Okay.
So, Miracle, do you have a website people can go to?
Yes.
Do you have a
It is
website?
Building
Okay.
Beyond Barriers. Yes.
Building Beyond.
BuildingBeyondBarriers.com.
Okay. Buildingbeyondbarriers.com. And that place we can see all of the written materials that's available, right? Yes. I think we
I
Yes,
think we have a
absolutely.
delay. Okay.
yeah, we got a little bit of delay. Okay, cool.
Okay.
And Keela just put it in the
Is that spelled correct? If it's not, I'll change it.
Yes. it is.
yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, guys. Well, we have our Father's Day episode coming up this weekend. This Thursday, I believe. And in the meantime, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We appreciate it. Don't hang up. And everybody have an awesome week. We'll see you Thursday live at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Miss Miracle.